everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Sophie Parr from Cyber Consulting, and I'm going to be helping facilitate today's presentation. Before I begin, I'd just like to ask that everyone hold their comments and questions until the end, and we'll have an opportunity to hear all of those. So today our presenters will be providing you with an update on Egg Harbor's highway project. They will go over how construction is going to impact your homes, businesses, and real estate taxes. And then you'll also be able to get some more detailed information at the project stations in the back once we finish up today. So here with us today are those involved with the project, which includes the Egg Harbor Village Board, the Parks and Public Works Committee, village staff, and then our two consultants, Mike Simon, project engineer from McMahon Associates, and Joe Murray, senior municipal advisor from Ellers Public Finance Advisors. And then also Paul from the Wisconsin DOT. All right, so our agenda today begins with an introduction from Village President John Heller, and then a project overview, schedule, and construction impact from Village Trustee and Parks and Public Works Chair Lisa Van Lannen and project engineer Mike Simon. Village Administrator Megan Sawyer and Joe Murray will then review the financial plan and tax impact. At the end, I'll be back up to open up the presentation for public comment. There are comment cards in the middle of the tables, so if you'd like to write your question down during the presentation, you can hand that to Jess or Tom, and we'll make sure to include those questions as part of the public comment. You'll also be able to simply raise your hand and ask a question that way as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John Heller, who will further introduce the project and share a brief history of the work that has been done in Egg Harbor over the years.
Thank you, Sophie. So I'd like to start by introducing the village board members that are presently attending. We have Lisa Van Lannen, and she's in charge of the Parks and Public Works, and as Sophie said, she'll give you the nuts and bolts as to what this project consists of, and along with Mike Simon. And we have Cambria Miller, who's the Plan Commission. She's in the back of the room. And again, I'm John Heller, and I head up the Utility Wastewater Committee. Oops. Oh, that thing. Oh, that one. Okay. So what I'd like to do is summarize the history of how we arrived at where we are at this time, and then look at where we go from here. More than 30 years ago, the residents and business community of Egg Harbor made the decision to make the leap from a drive-through village to an active partner in the Door County tourism economy. So let's see historically what that looks like from its inception and how it impacted our infrastructure and other amenities, and then also update any current activity that's occurring on our public sites. So again, 30-some years ago, Highway 42 initial construction occurred, and with all the curb gutters, lighting, sidewalks, and at the same time, the wastewater treatment plant was constructed. So over the past 30 years, there's been a lot of improvements made on the treatment plant, and I'd like to point out a couple of things that we're doing at the present time, or a major thing that we're doing at the present time. The wastewater treatment plant is an efficient and well-maintained operation, and we're in a very strong financial position. Presently, we're undergoing a major upgrade that will be completed this September. The electric systems are all out of compliance, and so all the electric is being completed, and that's a major item. The The Headworks, which is the area that receives the wastewater, that's being redone. And it's all underway and will be completed this September. And I invite anyone that would like to see what's going on to call the Village Hall and make an appointment. The operators, I like to give tours, so please avail yourself of that. You're paid for it, so, and it's actually very interesting. Next, let's look at the public beach. In 2009, phase 1 of the public beach was completed, and that consisted of doing a retention area for runoff water and parking. And you can see the parking right here. 2 years ago, we tore out a seawall that was 4 feet high, that ran along this area, and completed this beach area along with the walls and back. And it's an absolutely beautiful, a beautiful addition. We're in the process of purchasing approximately 1 acre of property that's presently alpine property that's in this area. And you can't see it, but there's a breakwater right here. And that kind of acts as a natural barrier to preserve the sand that would otherwise be washed out by the currents that go in this direction. Also, this is the main lift station for our treatment plant. We plan on moving that, relocating that to somewhere in this area. We don't know exactly where, but that's going to occur. And that's a phase 2 project for the wastewater treatment plant. Then we move to the Egg Harbor Marina and the Harborview Park. These two are the hub of the village. When you're obviously in the harbor, you're looking down, you're looking at the marina. When you're in the marina and you're looking up, you're looking at the harbor. And a lot of activity occurs here. We have the farmers market, all the business association events generally occur in the park, and the breakwater from the marina is probably one of the major attractions for tourists coming into the village. Next, we have the Peg Egan and the Crest Pavilion. Now, these two are going to benefit from a major construction that's going to start on Church Street this fall, and then next spring. It's going to be a complete urbanization of Church Street with curb, gutters, sidewalks, stormwater, lighting, everything that makes it a complete street. So, that should add to that amenity. Want to click, Megan? So this is looking back at the construction on 42 back in '98. The initial construction occurred with curb, gutter, etc., and sidewalks. 2009 we had a resurfacing, and 2013 we're looking at redoing the complete highway, and Lisa will get you into that. It should be pointed out that this project was scheduled to start in 2017 and was pushed back. We're in a position right now where the Department of Transportation is going to come through in 2013 and resurface our streets, whether we remodernize it or not. So we have to take advantage of that. Let's see, what else was I going to say? So I guess that's pretty much it. So I'll turn it over to Lisa and Mike, and they'll give you the particulars.
Thank you, John. Hello, friends. I know so many of you out here. And we in the Parks and Public Works Committee are so excited and so happy to have reached the point where we can share this proposal with you, the Egg Harbor community. As John said, the last time any sidewalk and infrastructure work has been done in the village was 1989, 32 years ago. And so it's getting really old, really tired, and it's time for us to give us a new, fresh look for Egg Harbor and bring us into the 21st century. But with a project of this magnitude, it took a lot of work and a lot of time, and I need to give a shout out to a lot of people who helped make this happen. First to the Parks and Public Works Committee volunteers. They're all here today. Ed Conlon, Don Helm, Ken Mattice, and Car Northrop. We started looking at this initially 10 years ago, and in the last year and a half, we've had marathon meetings, 3 to 4 hours every month, a couple meetings between the months. We've had walkthroughs throughout the downtown streets. We've had walkthroughs throughout the communities north of us, Ephraim, Fish Creek, Sister Bay, to see how their projects look, to see how we can, if we can glean anything from their work. So we put a lot of time and effort in this. And I also need to thank the lead engineer, Mike Simon of McMahon Engineering. His competence and patience are greatly appreciated. He's patiently answered our questions several times on engineering details so we can try to get we're not engineers, so he had to try to drill into us those concepts, which was sort of hard because we were more big picture people. And we're very grateful for all his work. And he's also interceded with the DOT, the DNR, and other state agencies that all work to make this happen for us in the village. And at the same time, the village administrative staff has always been there for us, and they've been at most of these meetings too. Megan, Tom, Lynn, Jess, and Lydia have all patiently and diligently set up our meetings for us, attended all the sessions, gathered and sorted streams of information necessary for our decision-making process. And individual community members have given input over the years that helped us clarify our decisions, and also the Village Board of Trustees has consistently been appraised of what we're doing and have kept us on track, and they've given us a lot of support and encouragement, so thank you to everybody for that. So as you can tell, this Highway 42 plan has been forged by many hands, and at its core is a labor of love for the community. And in approaching this monumental task, the committee met early on to comb through and sort through a lot of ideas to make this happen. And we distilled it down to 5 goals which needed to be met and decisions that had to be made to make this happen. And those 5 goals are to improve the safety for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists, to replace our aging and decaying sidewalks, to create a more dimensional connection within the village, to make parking and maintenance improvements, and to maintain and improve the village aesthetic. The first goal was a big one, to safety first always, to improve safety for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists. We did this through several key decisions. The first was traffic calming. Data shows that an effective way to calm traffic is by narrowing the traffic lane and thus forcing drivers to slow down and be more alert. And we did this by narrowing the north and south traffic lanes, each by about 1 foot. Another safety decision we made was to reroute the bicycle traffic off of Highway 42 and onto Church Street. We did this by way of connectors at Harbor School Road and County E to make this so bicyclists can go from the north-south connectors onto Church Street and stay off the busy highway. And there'll be more about those connectors later. Another safety decision was left-hand turn lanes. Right now, the village has 1 turn lane for northbound traffic going onto County G. This lane will be extended a bit farther south so oncoming motorists from G have a better view of the pedestrians and oncoming traffic. this is according to DOT calculations, which we use to make our decisions. And what's more, we added additional turn lanes on just north of that congested curve. Traffic going north will have a left-hand turn lane onto White Cliff Road. Traffic coming south will have a left-hand turn lane onto Main Street Shops. We also repositioned a lot of bump outs. You know what these bump outs are? They're the roughly green areas that roughly run between the sidewalks and the highway. We selectively place the bump outs where they'd be more, provide green space and traffic calming for traffic coming into the village. The village core, which is roughly Harbor School Road to County E, there'll be extensive bump outs there to calm down the traffic and to provide greenery. And at select places between there and the village curb, particularly in places where there's high traffic or where there's steep driveway inclines. And also crosswalks. Right now our crosswalks can be hard to see. We have those big cones in the center of the highway, which are pretty effective. But for greater pedestrian safety, the new Highway 42 crosswalks are proposed to be much more visible with wide white ladder-like bars across the road. And you'll see this in the upcoming video. And also the crosswalk between Shipwreck and Harbor View Road is now staged with a pedestrian island and moved forward. You probably all know this now. Originally, County G was part of this project. That broke off on its own and is now done. It looks lovely. And as part of that, we already started that project, that crosswalk. And if anyone's walked it and driven there, you realize it's much safer. The pedestrians don't have to walk behind you anymore. And with Highway 42, when it connects to that, it will extend farther out so that it will be a buffer to keep traffic back even farther. So we're happy we did the best we could with that, and we're happy with the way that turned out. So all that was done with safety in mind. Our second goal is to replace our aging and decaying sidewalks. And I don't need to tell anybody here how bad a shape our 32-year-old sidewalks are. They're pretty much unusable for the heavy traffic we have on them. If someone's going north and you meet somebody going south, you pretty much have to step aside so you don't bump shoulders. They're really not usable or functional. And communities throughout the country are widening their sidewalks. Whenever you travel, you'll probably notice downtown sidewalks are quite wide. So we are proposing to replace our existing 5-foot asphalt sidewalks with a combined 10-foot sidewalk and terrace. The new width will be broken up with brickwork on the edges and plantings, along with some benches, potted plants in select spots throughout the downtown core. You'll see this in the video coming up. They may or may not be exactly where they are in the video, but you'll get the picture. We're going to break that up for greenery and for visual effects. And we're also considering the possibilities of trees in the graded areas and the designated extensions, which runs from Harbor School Road past Chief Oshkosh's South Trail and on Highway E north to Church Street. There'll be 5-foot sidewalks there, and that will be broken up with green space also. A third goal is to create a more dimensional, multimodal connection within the village. And when we started this project, Egg Harbor was pretty much a two-dimensional village with a Highway 42 going through it. And to give the village infrastructure more dimension, we hope to interconnect points of interest, such as the beach, the dog park, the Peg Egan, with new paved connections. And as mentioned, G was originally part of this project, but since then, that's been completed, and we've already accomplished a part of that goal. As you notice, the sidewalk from 42 connects onto G, which connects to the dog trail, or to the bird trail, which goes to the beach. So people who want to walk from the downtown to the beach don't have to worry about going on the road and be subjecting themselves to dangerous traffic conditions from the speeders on that road. As mentioned before, we're also going to connect the village on Harbor School Road and on E with Church Street and Highway 42 are pretty much parallel roads. We're going to connect those with those connections with sidewalk, curb gutter, bike paths and lighting. So it'll be really nice if you're walking the village and want to clock your miles or clock your time. You can do this big circuit now along the whole downtown core. And sorry, this is going back and forth. So, and you can also break it up with the connections at Orchard Street and Market Street. So that'll really be nice when it happens. When it happens, I should say. So then there's so many possibilities down the road. We can connect throughout the whole village now once that is set up for future projects. And a fourth goal is to improve the ease of parking and maintenance. Right now, parking seems sporadic in the downtown corridor and is broken up with a string of bump outs. As mentioned in our first goal, the bump outs will be placed selectively for traffic calming upon entering the core. And this will allow for more clusters of parking, a string of parking away from the busy curve. So between the curve and the core is where much of the parking will be moved. And Mike will go over later how many extra parking spaces that we will have. At the same time, we are proposing to eliminate the entrance to the Bertinger Center off 42 and use only the Orchard Street entrance. That driveway has to be redone regardless in the past, and we will add several new parking spots there that will be reconfigured. You can still enter from Highway 42 through that sidewalk ramp, and we'll also hope to have steps onto that terrace where you can enter it, but you will drive in, and it will also be much safer on Orchard Street, and it will be reconfigured, and you'll see that in the videos. It will look really nice. It was a brilliant idea that Mike Simon came up with, and we all ran with it, and we're all real happy with it. And the fifth goal was to maintain and improve the village aesthetic. And throughout the decades, we, the Egg Harbor stakeholders, have consistently expressed a desire to maintain our small town feel and also integrate it with modern amenities. The village aesthetic has been an overriding element in our considerations throughout this whole process. Along with maximizing greenery as much as possible, a key component of the village aesthetics of this project has been the desire to bury the overhead electrical wires. Church Street, Market Street, Orchard Street already have buried wires, and perhaps that's why Church Street seems so calming when we're on it. Buried wire is a standard component in many developments throughout the country, and we see it here in Egg Harbor at the Orchards, Apple Ridge, and Ames Farm. The committee always knew this would be a more expensive option compared to above ground wiring, but we believe in the value of the concept, both real and intrinsic. We also believe it's financially feasible. The villages of Ephraim, Sister Bay have already buried their wires, and compare this with downtown Fish Creek with their tall, dark fiberglass poles. An opportunity like this only comes 2 or 3 times a century. We missed that opportunity 32 years ago when all that road work and sidewalks were put in. And we believe now is the time for Egg Harbor to bury its wires. We don't want to wait another 30 or 50 years. The comparisons of the cost for burying or not burying the wires, along with payment breakdowns and tax implications, are going to come later on in this presentation. But now Mike Simon will present a lot of engineering details of the project and give us some videos and stills. Thank you.
The first slide, my name is Mike Simon from McMahon, project engineer for the village. This first slide that we're showing is a project overview of various projects the village has going. There's handouts available in the back with this map to take home as well. The focus of the meeting tonight is the Highway 42 project, or this morning I should say. You can see there's different symbols along Highway 42 that represent the different projects on 42. The first symbol is the black dots. That represents the TAP project. That's Transportation Alternatives Program project. The village received approximately $1.4 million of federal funding for this project, and it's intended to create complete streets with bike and pedestrian accommodations. The core project is a village-fronted project that extends from Harbor School Road to County-Trick Highway E. And also there's a section along E from 42 to Church Street. There's a third project in here that is the DOT's project for milling and overlaying the 2 travel lanes on the highway, not just through the village, but going into it and beyond. I was going to give Paul Brower an opportunity to talk a little bit about that.
Thanks, Mike. As Mike had mentioned, well, first of all, I'm Paul Brower. I'm with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation out of Green Bay. I'm the project manager for state highway projects in Door and Kewaunee counties. As Mike had said, at about the same time these local projects are going on, we're going to have a Highway 42 resurfacing project. Primarily involves milling off and repaving about 2 inches of the asphalt pavement on just the lanes and the shoulders. The limits are from Rainbow Ridge Court to Bluff Lane, which goes from both the south end of Egg Harbor up to the south end of Fish Creek. It's approximately 7 miles in length. Just want to clarify that our work is going to be a separate project and a separate let contract from the local project that the others were just referring to. Our work involves just lanes and the shoulders, the paving of them, and the parking lane, sidewalk, etc. The local accommodations, that's all being done with the local project that they were talking about. Although we do have to coordinate them very closely because they're going to be occurring at the same time. Should also note that our project will involve some beam guard work from roughly County T to Ballpark Road at the south end of Egg Harbor, and from just south of Bluff Lane at the north end of the job near Fish Creek. The schedule for our resurfacing project of Highway 42, we're estimating right now, based on coordinating with the local work, but we're estimating somewhere around 40 working days, which equates to about 2.5 months worth of work. That 2.5 months worth of work is going to be spread or split on either side of the summer peak. So we'll start in spring of 2023, probably in April, as soon as the weather allows. We'll work either up to about Memorial Day, maybe up to the 4th of July holiday, and then we'll take a suspension, and then anything that's left we'll finish in the fall, probably after Labor Day up into roughly November. As far as traffic impacts, the type of work that we're doing with just milling and paving, typically we can just do that with single lane closures and flagging operations where you take turns using the same lane past the paving train. That'll probably be the case north of town up to Fish Creek, but right in the village, because some of that work is going to be happening concurrently with the village's local project, some of our work when we resurface will likely occur during the closure and detour of the local project. Just so you know, that's in a nutshell, that's what we're doing. It's very simple work compared to what the village's work is. I have some handouts back by the TV there if you want to grab one. It tells a little bit about our portion of the work and some contact information if you have questions. And I'll be hanging around here a little bit after the meeting if you have questions for me. Thank you.
A couple of other things I want to point out. We have this slide up here. Lisa mentioned the Church Street project. The Church Street project goes from E to Harbor School Road, and also from along Harbor School Road from Church to 42. This will complete bike lanes and sidewalk connections continuously along this route. The Village's Core project also includes the County-Trick Highway E. We're adding bike lanes and sidewalk on that section as well. The ultimate project will have bike lanes extending from the north connection of Church Street and 42, all the way down to E, along E to Church Street to Harbor School Road to 42, and to the south end of the village. A little bit on individual sections here. The south segment of the TAP project begins at South Trail and extends north to Harbor School Road. The existing roadway is a 2-lane rural section primarily, with no sidewalk except for the very northern 600 feet south of Harbor School Road, where there's curb and gutter and an asphalt trail on both sides of the roadway. Proposed typical section would be to urbanize the west side of the roadway. This will be curb and gutter, storm sewer. We'll be adding a bike lane for southbound traffic, and the paved shoulder for northbound traffic will be maintained and will be resurfaced as part of the DOT's project. There'll also be street lighting on this section of the roadway as well. The next section, the TAP project, the northern segment, extends from Country Highway E to Church Street. This section, there are no sidewalks in this section. It's a two-lane rural roadway with no pedestrian facilities at all. So what is being proposed is to reconstruct the roadway to, we're reconstructing the west and east sides of the roadway adjacent to the DOT's Milner Resurface project to add bike lanes to both sides of the road, sidewalk, and street lighting. Since we're eliminating the ditches on both sides of the road in this section, the DNR requires you to replace the filtration characteristics of the existing ditches with some other type of stormwater quality treatment. It's either done with biofilters, which we're showing here, or at the stormwater pond. Due to the restricted amount of right-of-way available, we'll be using the biofilters. What these are, an example that would likely occur, we're still working with the DOT on what they'll allow in the right-of-way. The biofilter located between the sidewalk and the back of the curb. The curb and gutter will have a flume that will discharge into the biofilter. The water filters through the sand treatment and then into the storm sewer, where it will connect to the inlets and into the storm sewer. These are pictures from previous projects that we've done. The third portion of the project, the Villages project, is the core project. It's from Harbor School Road to County Highway E, and from E, along E from 42 to Church Street. The existing facilities out there it is curb and gutter with storm sewer, and there is asphalt sidewalk on both sides of the road. The sidewalk is narrow and does not meet ADA requirements. There are no pedestrian facilities along Highway E at this time. So what we're proposing to do is to reconstruct the existing urban sections. Like Lisa mentioned, most of the bump outs will be gone except in strategic locations. The intent of this is to expand parking, provide more parking along 42. The sidewalk will be reconstructed with concrete instead of asphalt. The current asphalt trails kind of meander through the right-of-way, avoiding various objects. This project will put the back of sidewalk along the right-of-way line on both sides. There'll be street lighting involved as well. Bike accommodation to be provided. That means the travel lane is wider than typical. It allows, if there is a bike that chooses to not use the marked bike route and go through town, still has a right to do that. And the wider travel lanes, where we have 15 feet, allows a car to pass a bike without crossing over center line. What we're showing here too is brick pavers along the roadway. We'll get into a little bit more of that when we get to the video sections of the project. The Country Highway E portion will include a sidewalk on the south side of the road. It'll be urbanized with bike lanes on both sides.
All right, I just wanted to jump in here to review some information with you regarding the bike lanes. As many of you may recall, back in 2019, the village went through a comprehensive master plan update, and public participation was a key component in that update. A survey was sent out to the public, and one of those survey questions asked the public specifically about their support for on-street bike lanes. 50% of respondents of the survey did say that they supported on-street bike lanes, with the most supported location being on Church Street from Harbor School Road to County Highway E. As Mike has previously mentioned, there will be bike lanes constructed on the Church Street project in that location.
Getting back to parking, again, the intent was to maximize the parking along Highway 42. Currently, there are 74 parking stalls between Harbor School Road and Contract Highway E. That will be expanded to 122 total stalls. The top section here shows the existing stalls in various segments of the project. Harbor School Road to Market currently has 19 stalls. That will be expanded to 34 stalls. Market Street to G has 19 stalls. That will be increased to 24. G to Orchard Street, there'll be a loss of 1 parking stall due to some left turn lanes that are being added. And Orchard Street to E goes from 10 to 39. In addition, as Lisa mentioned, we're making improvements at the Birchinger Center parking lot. Currently, in the north lot, closest to Highway 42, if you're familiar with that, it's everything north of the Orchard Street entrance. There are currently 21 stalls. By eliminating the driveway entrance off of 42, we'll be able to expand the parking lot and add stalls. In addition, currently the parking stalls in that lot are all oriented to people coming off of Highway 42, where the majority of people are coming off of Orchard Street, so it makes it, everyone has to kind of do a U-turn to get into the parking stalls. Those will all be reconfigured to 90-degree stalls, which will also increase the number of stalls. So that's going from 21 stalls to 37 stalls. So, and those are immediately adjacent to Highway 42. So overall, total increase in stalls will be from 95 to 159, that gave them 164 stalls. And I mentioned here in asterisk, Church Street will be adding 188 stalls as part of the urbanization of that project. Lisa mentioned crosswalks with bump outs. Again, we're combining the traffic calming effects of a bump out at pedestrian locations, and the bump outs also shorten the length of a crossing here. This is the crosswalk ladder type that we're currently working with the DOT. We have to go through approval process on all the crosswalks on Highway 42. They're all permitted individually with the DOT. So that's still a process we're going through. The village is looking at ways to make them more, to make the crosswalks stand out more than the typical parallel 6-inch lines. Someone mentioned yesterday asking about rectangular rapid flash beacons. That's also been discussed at the committee level. No decisions have been made on those yet. Okay, we created a couple videos to help everyone visualize the proposed improvements. This first video is an aerial view and an overhead view of the existing street in various sections, and followed immediately with a 3D rendering that was created, a 3D model of the proposed improvements to help you visualize what's going on here. So I'm just going to play this. It's about 3 minutes long. point out that this video is based on the Baird utility option. There's other options the village is considering. We'll get into that a little bit later here. The next video will be a street level view of just the 3D rendering. Again, about 3 minutes. Then I'll be getting into some still shots to go over the key points of the project. Okay, next I'm going to go over some still renderings that were created from the model. Just point out some key aspects. Again, I pointed out there's a previous slide on this, on the traffic calming effects, the landscaping. We're showing brick pavers here along the edges throughout the project. Currently there are brick pavers throughout the village's core area that will be repurposed as part of this project, plus there's quite a bit in storage as well. The landscaping, as Lisa pointed out, this is the current concept. Nothing has been finalized on this other than the bump out locations. Again, Main Street Market is here. We're showing additional crosswalks in this location with the ladder type crosswalks. This is, over here on the right is where the gas station was. This is a proposed building that's been approved. We've got the model from the the architect for that project inserted into ours to give you an idea what it's going to look like. The south side of Shipwreck, there are some homes have been removed, one home and a garage. So we're just showing that as green right now. There's a site plan being reviewed at this time for various improvements there. In terms of the landscaping locations that we're including, for example, we're not showing anything in here where there's room because there's landscaping there being proposed. So we're going to be taking a look at issues like that as far as where to put the landscaping. We're showing the existing left turn lane for Highway G for northbound traffic. Again, a similar, just a different look at the same location with the left turn lane. Currently, this is just a big wide open asphalt pavement that we're going to be creating a median with the left turn lane that I'll show you coming up here. Okay, a couple items here. Currently, there's an asphalt sidewalk kind of meanders through the park. It goes right up to the entryway here and ties into the existing crosswalk. That will be taken out. We'll continue the conventional sidewalk along the edge of the curb and gutter and create an extension connecting the park to the sidewalk. A couple things I want to point out as well are the above ground utility boxes or transformer boxes that are needed behind the sidewalk for bearing utilities. The locations we're showing came from WPS and from their preliminary plan, and also the size of the boxes came from them as well. So we tried to make it as realistic as possible. There's a box here. There's a large box over here. We'll get into a little bit later too about the possible ways of screening these boxes to make them less conspicuous. Okay, this slide shows the left turn lane for northbound traffic on going to White Cliff Road, and also for southbound traffic at the Main Street shops. Currently, there's a lot of congestion, backups that occur in this area, especially to the north, due to lack of a turn lane, so that's the purpose of that turn lane. You can see where we've got yellow curb and gutter through here, that's where there's no parking is going to be allowed. Again, the crosswalk at north side of White Cliff Road, ladder type, some landscaping over here with a utility box shown here. And again, the paver brick along the edges. This was the improvement at the Birchner Center parking lot that we discussed a couple times already. There's an existing driveway that comes through here that connects to 42. With all these parking stalls are oriented 45 degrees for traffic coming in from 42. That driveway will be eliminated. A couple stalls added at that location where the driveway connection was. We'll be extending the retaining wall through here, raising the grade of the parking lot, and adding an additional 16 stalls at this location here. There will be two connections to the parking lot. There will be a step added with the sidewalk connection to the existing sidewalk that currently goes from the entrance to the building to Highway 42. Again, the north end of the project, this is Highway E with the bump outs, the landscaping, the tree entrances, and the crosswalk, the ladder type crosswalk pavement marking. Okay, next we'll go into the utility options. We looked at 3 different options for maintaining utility service to the village. We coordinated with WPS and the other utilities that are currently sharing their poles. What we show here on the left side is an existing pole, example of existing pole in the downtown area. We're showing there's a guy wire that goes across the sidewalk and connects to the pole and goes over the existing sidewalk. The current standard for that type of guy wire is shown here. This is from a different project we did where the comes out at more of a 90-degree angle and gives you more vertical clearance and horizontal clearance to the edge of the sidewalk. Megan will be getting the costs of different alternatives a little bit later. I'll just kind of give you the overall picture. There would be no cost to the village for maintaining the wooden poles and aerial lines. The only potential cost there might be is if we need to acquire easements for these down guy wires. Our project would be reversed. The poles would be in the terrace with the guy wire coming down to private property. The second option is a fiberglass pole option. If you're familiar with Fish Creek, this is a picture from their project. They replaced their wooden poles with these black fiberglass poles. They're much taller, buried much deeper. The advantage of these poles is you can eliminate the guy wires. There are no guy wires. Each individual pole is engineered specifically for the project. The overall cost estimate we received from WPS and other utilities is about $1.2 million to convert over to the fiberglass pole option. And the third option is to bury the utilities, as we've shown on the videos. This is Ephraim, recent burial project, similar to Sister Bay, where they also buried their utilities. The overall cost from WPS and the other utilities to bury their facilities, and also for the acquiring right-of-way for the easements needed for the utility boxes, comes out to about $2.3 million. Utility screening, as it's shown in the video, we used plantings. We have to work with utilities, see what they will and won't allow. These are examples. This is from Sister Bay. Example, they have low plantings around their transformer boxes. I should point out too that the boxes shown in the video are just the WPS boxes. The telephone and other communication lines will have their own transformers. They're much smaller. Like for example, here's one. I'm assuming there's a phone and a TV pedestals in here. They're much smaller, but they will be clustered at the same location. These other pictures are just different examples that I found online.
All right, as I mentioned previously, we had our comprehensive master plan update in 2019, and a survey went out as part of our public participation process for that update. The public in that survey was also asked directly about the burial of utilities, and over 63% of survey respondents stated that they would support the village pursuing the burial of the lines. However, many commented that they would like to know the costs associated with the burial and the impact on taxpayers, which is what we're here to discuss today. This is a side-by-side comparison of those utility options that Mike just reviewed with us. The first option being the overhead utilities with the wooden poles and guy wires. There is a potential cost to the village with acquiring easements for the guy wires that would be located on private property. A minimal impact as far as tax impact. And as far as the tax impact goes, we looked at the debt levy impact for the burial on a $300,000 home. The next option would be overhead utilities with engineered fiberglass poles. That cost to the village is $1.2 million. That includes the cost of the engineered poles and the relocation of the other communication utilities onto those poles. The debt levy impact on a $300,000 home for that option is approximately $55 per year for the next 20 years. And then the third option is the underground or buried utilities. That total cost comes in at $2.3 million, includes the cost of all the utility burial, the equipment easements that would be required for the utility boxes on private property, and the private connections to homes. The debt levy impact on a $300,000 home for that option is approximately $110 per year for the next 20 years. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about the committee's recommendation. The Parks and Public Works Committee carefully considered the utility options we just reviewed with all of you and made the decision to recommend utility burial to the village board. The Parks and Public Works Committee based this recommendation on a few factors. One being that many major Egg Harbor developments have already adopted the planned unit development standard of burying above ground utilities. Some of these developments in the village are Ames Farm, the Orchards, and Apple Ridge. Another reason the committee made the recommendation was based on past Egg Harbor leaders showing foresight by burying utilities on Church Street, Market Street, Orchard Road, and most recently, a section of County Highway G. Aesthetic results of the elimination of wooden poles with guy wires or the engineered fiberglass poles. And as Lisa mentioned earlier, the next opportunity to bury our utilities will not come for another 30 to 50 years. The village board has yet to make their final decision on the utility options. They'll be making that decision at their upcoming August 9th village board meeting. All of the utility information that we reviewed with you today will be presented to them, as well as any public input we receive today, as well as any input we received last night. A decision has to be made on the utilities before we can finalize our project plans. So once the board makes those final decisions, we'll be modifying our project plans appropriately.
Okay, just touch base on the schedule here a little bit. Paul went over the schedule for the DOT support portion of the project. So this is the schedule for the village's projects. We plan to start work in the fall of 2022 with the storm sewer work and the TAP projects. That's the north and south segments of the project we pointed out to you. In addition, that's when the utility work would take place. I want to point out the burying utilities is just from Harbor School Road to E. Utilities also have work to do in the TAP portions of the project, south of Harbor School Road and north of E. They need to relocate their existing overhead power lines and the other facilities as well that are on the poles. In the spring of '23, by spring we mean the time before Memorial Day, the goal is to get the storm sewer in the core portion of the project. There's already a trunk line storm sewer there, so we'd just be extending the inlet leads to match the new curve, the widened curve. With the asphalt pavement would be going in for the village portion of the project. Again, as Paul mentioned, some coordination involved with the DOT's project. Temporary sidewalk will be needed to get us through the summer months and before the fall comes up and we start the next phase. So at Memorial Day, we'll be stopping and starting again after Labor Day. After Labor Day, we'll have the permanent sidewalk going in throughout the entire core. The street lighting, final pavement marking, and then final restoration. And in the spring of 2024, because of the lateness of the restoration in the fall 23, there'll be some touch-up work required. In addition, the landscaping features that were shown in the video and the renderings, the potted plants, the planters, the plants in the ground, that type of thing, that will all occur in the, I should also mention benches, waste receptacles, that type of thing that were shown in the video will be installed as part of the project in the spring of 2024.
All right, now I'd like to mention some methods the village is actively working on minimizing the impacts to businesses during our construction. As Mike just mentioned, we'll be restricting our construction to the less busy months of the year. We'll be reconstructing the Church Street corridor to provide alternate access to businesses, so that project will be tied up before the start of the State Highway 42 project. We'll be adding a lot of parking on Church Street, as we mentioned, and making improvements to the Village View parking lot to make up for the lost parking on State Highway 42 during our construction. We'll also have sidewalk improvements via Harbor School Road to link pedestrians from that parking on Church Street down to the businesses. We have also recently reconstructed County Highway G. That will provide an alternate access to businesses, and there's also pedestrian accommodations in that section as well. And we'll be working with the Egg Harbor Business Association to create a map of alternate routes to local businesses. We'll have that map created. We'll put it at locations inside the village as well as on the outskirts of the village, so that people can get a copy of the map as they're heading into town. They'll be able to navigate once they get here and we're under construction. Now we'll review the project investment and tax impact. So starting with an overview of the project costs, The TAP project sections, which are the north and south sidewalk extensions that we reviewed earlier, has an estimated cost of $1.7 million, including a 5% contingency. This is the section of the project that the village has received Transportation Alternative Program grant funding for, in the amount of $1.382 million. The next section, the core project section, which runs from Harbor School Road to County Highway E, has an estimated cost of $1.9 million. That includes a 15% contingency. The utility line burial has an estimated cost of $2.3 million. We reviewed the details of that a few minutes ago. And then there's construction administration costs in the amount of $340,000. That brings our total estimated project cost to $6.24 million. Subtract that 3.82 TAP grant, which brings the cost to $4.8 million. The village will be utilizing general obligation bonds and possibly a general obligation note to fund the project. We are not allowed to bond for the utility burial, so if the decision is made to bury the utilities, that funding will come from a general obligation note instead of a bond. The village worked with Ellers on putting together a financing plan for the debt service that is associated with the project. The green column here up on the screen reviews the costs or the financing plan inclusive of burying the utilities. Those three different rows that are highlighted in different colors notate the years with a tax rate increase. I'd like to point out that these are conservative projections that were put together for the financing plan, so they'll be a little bit different as we get our actual costs put together. So the green column is inclusive of burying the utilities, and then the white column would be the financing plan without burying the utilities. The column with grant funds there's 3 grants that will be applied over time. The first one being a grant associated with the Alpine purchase that John mentioned earlier. The second $1 million grant is in association with our Church Street project, and then that last grant being for the TAP project sections that I just mentioned. Now we'll review the debt capacity and village philosophy. Wisconsin statute sets municipal debt limits at 5% of a municipality's total equalized value. So this means that the village's current maximum debt capacity is approximately $20.5 million. In 2016, the village board gave staff direction to stay within 60% of our debt limit capacity while capital planning. We've been successful in doing so for the past 4 years. The village board has recently agreed to exceed the 60% debt limit capacity for the upcoming road improvement projects, meaning that will only be over that 60% threshold for a total of 5 years. We will be staying within our statutory limitation of 5%, and the debt limit will return to below the 60% target in 2026. This is a look at our historic, current, and projected debt ratios for the village. Before I get into the details, I'll just point out that 3% of our overall 5% debt limit capacity equals 60%, our 60% target. So as you'll see, up until 2021, we have been successful in staying below that 60% threshold. Currently here in 2021, we're at 63% of our debt capacity. We'll be bumped up to 87% at our peak in 2022, coming down to 78% in 2023, 68% in 2024, 62% in 2025, and back down to 57% under the 60% target in 2026. This is a look at our debt utilization versus our statutory debt limit. The blue is the debt that we will have. The orange is what we'll have left as far as our debt limit capacity goes. So just looking at our historic, current, and projected situation here as well. It is important to point out that as of 2029, the Egg Harbor Marina debt and the Donald and Carol Cross Pavilion debt is scheduled to retire in 2029. All right, now a very important question, how this will affect taxes. So what we did is we looked at a real tax bill here in the village with a property with a total assessed value of around $300,000. And as we're talking about the tax increase, what we are talking about is the yellow highlighted line here up on the screen. That is the Village of Egg Harbor section of your tax bill. So when we look at the tax rate increase, we're really talking about the increase to the $1,259.12 section of the tax bill. So the tax bill impact, this is inclusive of the village's total debt service and our total operating budget, makes up the village portion of your tax bill. So we're starting with that 2020 net tax of $1,259.12. The first increase comes in 2021 related to the Crest Pavilion referendum that was passed earlier this year. That is a projected $90.90 increase, bringing that total net tax for the village to $1,350.05. Then we have the first step of the debt service taking place in 2022. That's a projected $89 increase, and that brings the total net tax to $1,439.05. Then we have the second step of debt service, which is inclusive of the varying of the utilities, coming in 2025. That brings the net tax in 2025 with an increase of $150 to $1,589.05. This is a look at the tax rate comparison of Egg Harbor with some of our other communities here in Door County. The 2020 net tax rate per 1,000 for Egg Harbor in 2020 was $12.02. Ephraim was $11.82. Sister Bay was $13.99, and Sturgeon Bay was $20.52. So with our projected increases, in 2022, the projected net tax rate per 1,000 will be $12.61, and in 2025, the projected increase is $13.10. And as I mentioned previously, the debt from the marina and the Crest Pavilion will be retired in 2029. So in 2029, our net tax rate will be dropped by $1. So it will be $12.10 come 2029. Then I'd just like to point out where you can find more information after today's presentation. We do have a dedicated webpage set up for the State Highway 42 project. You can find that at villageofeggharbor.org/HWY42. That webpage will be updated with today's presentation, as well as project plans and schedules, and as well as a reporting of last night's presentation and this morning's presentation as well. You can also stop by the village office to get any more information or ask any additional questions at any time. If you don't know, our village office is located just across the way here in the Birchinger Center. You can also feel free to call or email the office. We'll be more than happy to help you with any follow-up questions you might have after today. And now we'll have Sophie join us to facilitate our public discussion.
All right, before I open up the floor for comments, I just want to say a couple of things. We ask that questions and comments be focused on general topics of the project. And if you have questions about a specific property or a specific issue, that you can bring those directly to the project partners once we adjourn. They will be available in the back. We also ask that you keep any comments or questions to about 1 to 2 minutes. If you have more that you would like to share, as Megan mentioned, you can stop in at the village office and you share more with them at that time. All right, so I'm gonna open up the floor. Any questions?
I have several.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, yeah,
Open
the cards.
If there are cards, you are more than welcome to hand them to Jess and we'll ask those questions. All right, we'll keep
Yes,
comments to
yes,
about 1 to 2
yes.
minutes.
Well, just 1 minute's a little bit hard. They've been planning 18 years here. Some of the people who are on this board have been telling me about how they're doing this project. Several times this project's been cut down completely for many reasons that people like you in the audience have been concerned about. They say this is a labor of love for the community. I'm a person who's had a house here for 30 plus years, and the house has been a residence for over 100 years. This is doing nothing for me in the way enhancing my project. I just want to add a few things here. First of all, my name is Luke Bentley at lukewbentley@gmail.com. I can be reached. I'd love to have somebody communicate with me and see if somebody else has my same feelings on this. town doesn't tell you about all the projects that they have in the works, is the sewer plant with going, bringing lines in from Heritage Lake and buying property down there, putting a cavity in the ground so we can hold our sewage. At this time of year, right now in July, we cannot handle bringing waste stuff. That's why we're looking to buy other property. Gee, they don't have any explanation here of what they're gonna be doing there. There's some beautiful homes up here that are very generous in helping the community out with crops of flowers down here and other things. Are we just going to dump on some of these people? I think everybody who has a property should have a say in this. I have a large property of 130 feet of shoreline, 2 houses up from the Berchinger Center here. I've illustrated in the past some photographs I have of some of these power units that are in Sister Bay that are still existing as is. I ask that my neighbors contact me and form some kind of a input into this. You can see how hard this is for me. I think we should have a little bit of a leeway. They want to make a decision on this on August 9th. I think that's really irresponsible. For 32 years, these sidewalks that they're complaining about, which I find
We're gonna ask
completely
just for your final thoughts on that.
walkabout, I think they're, would anybody, please raise your hand if you wish me to stop.
All right, any other questions in the audience? Tom's got a question on her.
Member near me who asks, is there anything proposed for South Trail and 42 to slow down traffic coming in and out of the village?
So slow down traffic coming in and out of the village on South Trail and 42.
I could maybe answer it. There's nothing specific as far as that, although in general, it will be naturally slowed down with the sidewalk, curb and gutter, and then the landscaping, people will see that and automatically slow down. It is at the bottom of the hill, we do have posted signs, and then we have that, the speed radar, which helps farther down. But as far as that specific thing, we don't have any specific project geared toward that.
All right, I've got another card question. How many total parking spaces will be added by combination of 42 and Church Street?
180 plus 70 some, I believe.
200 some?
It's 188 and 64.
188 plus 64.
Megan's gonna
So
do that.
that's 240 something.
252.
252.
Okay, so then the other question is, are there any pictures or videos to look at Church Street before and after, similar to how 42 was presented?
No, there's not.
Mike? I think we had some drawings of it, more of a 2D drawings that were presented, engineering plans, but nothing like this video. We can offer them on our website if you want, but they're three-dimensional. I mean, they're sort of one-dimensional that show the new sidewalk, curb, gutter, street lights, extended parking by the dog park, bump outs by the Peg Egan. So we could try to provide those, whoever asked that question. Thank you for the question.
Yes, over here.
What is the cost for
Hang on, let me get you a mic.
What is the cost for the project for $300,000? We heard about the lights, but what about the entire project for $300,000?
4.85 million?
For $300,000.
Oh, for taxes, oh.
So that, go ahead.
So that would be the tax bill impact that I reviewed. So it comes in 2 steps. First step is in 2022 with an $89 increase. The second step comes in 2025 with a $150 increase.
So 89, 150, and then 110 if you go along with it.
That's inclusive of bearing the line. So that 110
39 is primarily Church Street.
All right, right here.
The tax projections that you've made, do they reflect, like we have a new building about to be built where the gas station used to be? We have some renovations to the Alpine Resort that are probably gonna all raise our tax income to some extent. Are those projections that we saw reflecting any of that, or is that, would that be kind of an unseen bonus?
Joe, would you answer that?
Can you please repeat the question?
The question was, excuse me, I'm Joe Murray from Ellers, the village's financial advisor. The question was, did the tax impact estimates include the new developments that are going into the village, the large projects that are going in downtown? And the answer to that question is no. We were conservative in our estimates and have a 1% growth in the village's equalized value. So yes, and that is very conservative. The village has been growing faster than that. So if the taxes, if the equalized value goes up faster than the 1%, the tax impact that you see here will go down. So yes, large projects like that would come online will all mean that the average taxpayer will be saving money from the projections we have.
All right, right here.
Don't run.
On trip.
I'm wondering how much influence the residents of village in the village of Egg Harbor can actually have on the outcome of this proposal.
Well, we had a substantial number of residents attend last night's meeting, and I would say there's overwhelming support for the project and varying utilities. So,
Are these people that live right in the village?
well,
Do
it's
they own businesses in the village?
a combination of both. There were definitely a lot of, I mean, I see a lot of residents at this meeting, and there were a lot of residents at yesterday's meeting. More so than business owners.
You did speak of community.
Pardon?
You spoke community people. Some of us are community. We live here.
I realize that, Lou. And, we don't want to diminish your concerns or,
I live in a neighborhood.
I know, and we don't want to downplay them, but I think we established when we went to the question and answer period that if you have specific questions, you should deal with the engineer, with
That will
Commonwealth.
take some time. It'll take some effort from some of the rest of these. And I think you're making a decision on August 9th could be irresponsible.
Well, I am inclined to not agree with that because
Okay, well, I'll
we've
be
been.
at that meeting and I'll try to speak again.
Okay, that's fine. We welcome you to do that.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes.
Yeah, I live in the Point Beach neighborhood, which is probably the largest neighborhood in the village. And we have streets with potholes. We have streets that are broken up into little pieces and the grass is growing in the streets. Where is the plan that we get equal care that the business district gets? With all the money we're spending in the business district, are we neglected in the neighborhoods?
Take a stab at this. Thank you, TC. There's a big picture and a smaller detailed picture way to look at this. And one way a community is as strong as its downtown. We've seen this over the past decades when malls went out of the downtown area. The whole community suffered. Towns big and small, Detroit, Green Bay, Appleton. With their downtown revitalizations, the whole community prospers and is more valuable, and that the residences have more property value, and everybody thrives that way. And the small picture is it's sort of an analogy with a family. One sibling thinks someone got a bigger piece of the cookie than the other, but it goes back and forth. I know you said there's a lot of potholes and issues with your neighborhood, but the village spends rough budgets. We get grants from the town the same way we get grants in this way, about $100,000 a year on village streets. one by one. We do a lot of streets in your neighborhood, and we plan on doing more this year. And we also have budgeted $250,000 for Parks and Public Works. And that's largely, much of their work goes into the marina, and every day they're at the beach. And that's for the residents, their friends and family and grandchildren to enjoy. So it goes both ways. Right now, this is helping a lot of downtown people, maybe specifically, but it also helps everybody. The same way when we put money into all the neighborhoods, that helps all of us too. We're very symbiotic. So I hope that answers your question to some degree.
Right here, John.
Kathy, you had made or Lisa, I'm sorry, you made a comment when we talked earlier that this only happens 2 to 3 times a century, so I'm glad you're really taking a good look at doing it right so far. You've put a lot of work into it. I thank you for that. My concern really is the intersection of White Cliff G and 42 and pedestrian safety. And I just want to try to encourage the installation maybe of the flashing beacons on those 2 crosswalks, because I do see that as a safety concern. I'm hoping, and maybe you can answer this, will the traffic flow be reduced to maybe a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit through the corridor?
Speed limit reduction, no, I'm not in our traffic unit, but we have traffic engineers that deal with this. That's a common request from the local units of government. Is whenever we get requests regarding, if it's a general public, we ask that request go through the local unit of government, we get the request to reduce speed. In order to do that, they typically have to do what they call a spot speed study. The common perception is that if you just cut the speed limit down, everybody's gonna drive slower. And actually, we gotta be careful with that. That doesn't always work. Not only does it create a law enforcement issue, if the common speed that people just out of comfort travel at a certain speed and you reduce it below that, that's where you have problems. You have enforcement issues. It also creates speed variation where some people are law-abiding citizens and will travel the speed limit, but if the rest of the people drive that comfort speed, which is higher, you get a variability in the speed that's being traveled, and that can result in rear enders and that sort of thing, and you can actually create a crash issue by unnecessarily reducing the speed. So if there is a desire to reduce the speed limit, we would ask that the request come to our traffic unit from the local unit of government. More than likely, and I can't say for sure because I don't know what's done up to this point, I just started managing Door County here recently. More than likely, there'll be a process where they'll evaluate it and see if a spot speed study is warranted, and then a decision will be made from there. Typically, speeds are based on the 85th percentile of the traveling speed that is being documented in the field as it is today. And because, like I said, because they want to gauge that speed close to what the general public is traveling out of comfort, because if you vary from that, you can actually create a problem. So I guess I would ask that the village is, curious or serious about that or wants to, that request would have to come to our traffic unit.
All right, Jan, come to the back.
Hi, my name is Jan. I'm working on the massage, which is the older Golden Lights building, which has the most egregious encroachment. So I'm in support of this project. I think it's going to be wonderful ultimately, but it's going to be a huge hassle and hardship on my business, which I'm willing to sacrifice for the greater good. But we've been asked to pay for it, basically chop off the front of our building entirely at our own expense. So I would like to plead to the board to at least help us a little bit. I mean, with this kind of budget, we're not asking for 100% help, but just a little bit of compensation would go a long way in terms of being neighborly.
Well, we're certainly sympathetic to your concern, and I would suggest we have a conversation. exactly what we can do, you know, I don't know at this point, but let's talk about it.
Any other comments or questions?
Thanks, I'm Ken from the Public Works Committee. TC, I just wanted to go back and comment on your question. You asked specifically about the roads in Point Beach, but I think your overall question was, what about attention in Point Beach? And the Public Works staff, through guidance from our committee, has spent a lot more time the last few years attending to Point Beach, specifically trimming the corners. Well, my phone's ringing in my hearing aid. I thought I had it shut off. Sorry about that. Attending to the corners and the line of sight on the corners, removing storm damage, and Cody drives the Point Beach area on a daily basis. So we have really tried to pay much more specific attention to our neighborhood that we live in. Granted, the roads need work, and we just have to fold those into the regular plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Yep.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Britton. I'm a pretty brand new resident, so I'm hesitant to even say anything, but it's a question on process, on the aesthetics, and this is probably a longer term question. In the renderings, everything on the landscaping looked so manicured, so pretty, and one of the things that I wondered is, what is the process for determining how that's decided? Because one of the beauties, I think, of Egg Harbor personally as a new resident and someone here is how the wildflowers, and it doesn't look incredibly manicured. So I'm not putting input in, I just wondered what is the process for when you're down the road making those decisions?
Someone from Parks?
Cody, our Public Works Director, he's down here in the gray shirt. So him and I have had just some preliminary conversations about those landscaping areas. As Mike had mentioned, we're still kind of working through the final plan for what they will entail. But we discussed putting in some perennial plants, some more natural plants, and then just popping in some annuals, you know, just bringing some color to those areas. But as far as the details of what those planting areas will actually be consisted of, we're still working through, so.
All right, any new people with any new comments or questions before I go back to the
I am just considering the underground utilities, is that a complete cost, or will the homeowner have to pay from the utility box to the house?
The cost that we showed includes the village has a private contractor who's going to be coming in and making the connections from the house to the new underground service. I believe, that is all part of the village cost. If there's other improvements within the home itself, if you get an outdated system that needs updated, that would be a homeowner's responsibility.
All right, any new questions, comments before I do a repeat? Yes.
I just want to thank everybody for all their hard work and their input, and I think this study is fabulous. I think the presentation was fabulous.
Thank you. There's another question here.
A word about aesthetic. And I appreciate the care to the aesthetic of the plan. My concern was when the survey that what Megan was alluding to throughout the presentation, one of the areas was the quaintness of the village. And I think this helps immensely. However, I don't think we have an overall plan, and that is not to this issue, but a larger village issue. What is the aesthetic of Egg Harbor? What are we seeking to be? And we've talked about that. Every time we have a new proposal, that comes up, but we haven't done anything about it. I appreciate this step forward, but I would say the overall aesthetic of the village's needs to be clarified, addressed, and we need to stick to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any general questions? And then I think we'll ask that if any specific questions about specific properties or specific issues can be directed to those involved. Yep.
I have a general question. What year was the right-of-way as it exists today staked by the Department of Transportation?
Can you repeat that one more time?
In what year was the right-of-way as it exists on paper today? When was that originally staked?
So when was the right of way originally staked?
I have no idea. I don't know do you know what the standard width is?
It's 66 feet.
Okay, 66 feet. That's a standard width that goes way back, so it's probably been there, I would guess, in the early 1900s. If you need to know an answer, we could probably look up the as-bills and find that, but
okay.
I don't really know for sure.
Okay. That'd be something I'd be interested in.
Any final thoughts? All right. Well, you are welcome to, Mr. Bentley, if you'd like to stay.
One final thought. I've asked the library to put those videos up of the way the old situation looked in the proposal, what they plan to do with the concrete right to the buildings, where most of our properties are encroached right into the right of way, and how it will look, so that we can all see that and come back and get a feeling of what we're digest what they plan to put in our, give us, what they plan to do to us. Because I don't see it as an enhancement. And the people who live in this community, but outside the village, when they come into town, they don't really care about this. They wanted what they had, which was very nice, and I think it's a poor direction to take. It was a poor direction we're going down without hearing what the concerns are of the people who live here and live around and come in here and came up here for this community, which we have presently.
Thank you.
I don't know how to word it. I'm very bad at it. I'd love somebody to talk to me.
Any of us that have businesses along, like through the core area or not, when are you gonna give us a specific deadline of when we have to have that down?
When you have to have.
Well, anything removed, like smart systems, we have our little front pavers that have to be removed and fence and stuff like that, nothing probably to that extent. But, when, like, I mean, next year, in spring of 23 is fine, we don't have to do it next year and have it sit unfinished for a while. Is there a certain deadline that you're gonna give us?
We don't have a certain deadline established yet, but we're still working through that. Hopefully, once these project plans get finalized, we'll have more direction to give you on when those encroachments would have to be removed.
In general, the work is starting in the fall. If they're buried utilities, the utilities are going to have to go into those areas. So the goal is to have their encroachments ideally would be gone before we start construction.
Speaking of those electrical boxes and all that, you have no idea, you're not giving anybody an idea where you're gonna throw these and what kind of eyesore they're gonna be. I ask you all again to look at this pamphlet of pictures I have here of these electrical boxes to be thrown randomly on anybody's property. Nobody's been given an idea of what's gonna be just thrown at them when you get this board decide that they're gonna go ahead with this. Look at this here and see what kind of pollution, visual pollution you're putting in here in concrete blueprint. No green tier town exists anymore.
We'll ask that specific issues be addressed with the project partners following the meeting. Any last remaining thoughts or comments? All right, you're more than welcome to stay and look at the information in the back. Overall, thank you for being here.